welcome everybody to our Camino 101 Technology on the Camino talk. We are continuing this series from the Camino Basics we did 2 weeks ago. And if you missed it, note that it is already on our YouTube channel, thanks to Martin Pena, who's here today with us. And one of us will drop that YouTube channel link in the chat. We ask that you put your questions into chat, and Rob will get back to you on the questions after his presentation. So a little bit about our Pilgrim presenter. Rob Nickerson is a retired professor of information systems at San Francisco State University. He walked parts of the Camino Francés, the Portuguese, and the Inglés 8 times between 2013 and 2019. On all his walks, he observed the use of technology by pilgrims, which sparked his interest in researching technology on the Camino. He has surveyed over 1,500 Camino pilgrims about their use of technology and has written several articles and given a number of presentations about technology on the Camino. So without further ado, Rob, you have the floor and I've got the door. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lori. I appreciate that that introduction there. I hope everybody can hear me and see my opening screen on the on their computers now. If there's any problems with that, let us know. So this is technology on the Camino. You know, all those smartphones and things like that, which we all carry with us these days, or most of us carry with us, I should say, these days. And what do you do with the Camino when you go on the Camino? Do you load up your backpack with all this stuff, or do you leave it at home? And that's going to be the theme for today. So this is part of the Camino 101 series, and I just want to give you the overview of the Camino 101 series, something that we at the NorCal chapter dreamt up some years ago. Camino Basics, which we had a couple weeks ago for the real newbies, Packing for the Camino, which we have in another couple of weeks, Camino routes, which come in periodically whenever someone has gone on one of these routes and talks about it. We had, I think, a Primitivo talk recently, and those are great. The technology on the Camino, that's this talk. And then what do you do when you get home, which we haven't had for a while because not many people have been coming home because nobody's going to the Camino because of COVID. But that's an excellent talk that we have. So this is the series, and this is where this talk fits into that series. So what's this about? Let me give you a little background here. This is a picture of my wife and me in Roncesvalles on our first Camino. I think this was 2013, as a matter of fact. And if you've ever been to Roncesvalles, you have probably had your picture taken at this exact same location. Just about everybody does that. So I was standing here like this, and I was looking back to where we spent the night. We spent the night at La Posada. That's, again, my wife there. And I was looking back at that. And unfortunately, I don't have a picture of what I'm going to describe next, which I wish I did, because it would be the perfect opening picture for this particular presentation. But there were 4 or 5 pilgrims standing there, and they had their backpacks on, and they had their poles, and they were all looking down at their hands. They were looking at their smartphones, I'm sure of that, or whatever technology they had. This got me interested in this topic of technology on the Camino. I did not have a smartphone on this trip. I had a very simple flip phone that I carried with me, but it was clear to me that lots of people were walking with technology. And I am a retired professor from San Francisco State University. At the time of 2013, I was actually, I was not retired at that time. I was an active professor. And one of the things that we as professors are expected to do is research. So when we go on and see things like this, we say to ourselves, well, is there some research that I can do? And maybe we also expected to publish and so forth. And could I get something out of this? And of course, it was interesting at the same time. So when I got back to the university in the fall, I found a graduate student who was willing to work with me. And we went out and we found 72 different apps for the Camino, quite remarkable. And we developed a huge spreadsheet of characteristics and features of these apps. And I began to study this and look at this. I ended up eventually doing 3 surveys of pilgrims. 2 were US based and 1 was international. And we got over 1,500 responses to these surveys about what technology did people use on the Camino, and why did they use it, and what did they like, and what did they not like, and so forth. And some of what you're going to hear during this presentation is based upon those surveys. So you're going to get a little background of my academic research, but this is not an academic presentation. This is definitely a presentation for everybody here. So anyway, that's the background. That's what got me started in this whole avenue of interest. And as Lori said, I've published a number of papers, academic papers on this subject, and given a number of presentations, both locally and nationally and internationally on this topic. And this is another one of those presentations. So I hope that you enjoy it. So what am I talking about technology on the Camino? I'm not talking about you lugging your laptop in your backpack, although some people do that. I'm talking about the mobile devices that we carry with us. This includes mobile phones, smartphones, tablets, e-readers, GPS devices, and a few people who actually take a laptop. I find it hard to believe because laptops are heavy, but I've known people who have brought laptops with them. So these are the types of things that I'm referring to. I'm not going to talk about you sitting at home with your desktop computer and searching the web for where you're going to go on the Camino and that sort of stuff. I'm really interested in what happens when you get out onto the Camino and you're using this technology. So the questions are: what do you take with you, and what do you leave at home? And that's what this presentation is going to address. So the answer is, I'm going to give you the answer to that question right now, and then you can all click off and go have a beer or whatever you want to do this afternoon. The answer is there is no answer. Oh, well, that's really discouraging. Why in the world would you want to listen to me? Okay, because it all depends on you. And that's going to be one of the themes of this presentation, that what you take with you and what you leave at home really depends upon you, and not me or your buddy who's you're walking with or anything like that. It's your decision and not someone else's decision. As we say, it's your Camino, and it's your technical Camino if you want to do that. So the first question is, are you a real pilgrim? Well, one of the things that I did in my surveys was I had an open-ended question. At the end of the survey, you always have this question where you say, tell us anything that you want to tell us, okay? So here's some of the responses to that open-ended question. My iPhone is the most useful, small, compact item I carry on my Camino. I would never walk the Camino without my iPhone. My iPhone was handy, small, and supplemented my journey. Very useful for connecting back to home and reassuring them. I didn't find it necessary to use mobile technology other than for keeping my family informed or where I was on the Camino. Mobile phone use is here to stay, and I must say it makes me sad. There was a huge difference in our first Camino in 2013, where few people used a smartphone, and our last Camino, where cafes were full of people staring at their phone instead of talking to each other. When I walk the Camino de Santiago, I let the way provide it, and it did. I think it's good to disconnect from the electronics and be at the moment, live the experience, and trust your way. And finally, leave it at home. So you see that there's a wide range of feelings about technology on the Camino. That some people think it's great, and some people say, no, it disrupts the experience on the Camino. I'm not going to tell you what you should do, it's entirely up to you. But the point of this is that your feelings about it may be someplace in this list or may not. It's really up to you. So in this talk, I am not going to tell you that you should carry mobile technology on the Camino. I'm not going to tell you what technology to take with you. And I'm not going to tell you how to use the technology. This is not a how-to presentation. I'm not going to tell you which button to press on your iPhone to make it do something or other. I am going to provide you with information to help you decide whether to carry mobile technology and help you decide what technology to take with you, should you decide to take it with you. Okay. So this is not a presentation on, oh, you've got to carry, a whole bunch of stuff with you. You don't. You most certainly do not. You could easily walk the Camino without taking any technology. So just to give you a little background on this, I'm going to give you one of the results from my surveys to show you sort of what other people think. Okay, so one of the things that we asked on the survey was, do you take mobile technology with you? And this was the latest survey, and it was 4.5% people said they didn't. This actually changed over time. From my first surveys back in 2013, it was more than that. I don't remember the exact number, but this has changed over time. It's become much more of technology has become much more accepted over time. Here is the results that I got from my most recent survey. 91% carry smartphones. A small percentage still carry basic flip phones. Tablets, 20%. E-readers, GPS devices, and even 3% lugged a laptop with them. And these were the percent of those who carried mobile devices, not the percent of all people. So this is a type of information that I've gathered over time, and to show you where your approach may fit into other people. So what I'm going to do now is go through a series of questions that you need to answer first, and before you start deciding what technology to take with you. And the first question is, do you want to be able to talk to people at home or elsewhere on the Camino? And I call this the voice question. Do you want to talk to somebody? Okay. Do you want to be able to access your email and the web while on the Camino? I call that the data question. And finally, do you want to be able to read books or other documents electronically while on the Camino? I call that the read question. And the answers to these questions determine what technology would be appropriate for you. And so let me go through these questions and possible answers to them, and talk about what technology you might want to take depending upon how you answer that question. So there's option, what I call option 0. You don't want to talk to anyone on the Camino. You don't want to access your email. You don't want to read anything unless it's in print. In other words, you just want to be in the Camino, in the moment of the Camino. You don't want to be have anything else interfere with what you're doing on the Camino. There's a certain number of people who want to do that, and I think that's just great. You don't take any mobile technology with you. That's fine. I'm all in favor of that. I personally can't do it, but I'm a technologist. But I'm impressed by people who can, leave all of those things behind, and just be in the moment on the Camino. So that's an entirely acceptable option, I feel, and you should not apologize for it in any way whatsoever. Option 1, okay? You don't want to take any technology with you, but you want to be able to make telephone calls home. You want to be able to access your email and the web. All right, that's an option there. You don't want to lug all that stuff with you, but you still want to be able to do some of these things. Well, there's a solution to that problem. Okay, use public phones. They're all over the place, and you get prepaid phone cards that you purchase at tobaccos, which are stores that sell cigarettes, and probably other places. So you get a prepaid phone card with 10 euros of time on it, and you slip that into the phone, and that allows you to make a phone call. So you can do this, and you can use computers at various locations. Albergues often have computers, bars, etc. They sometimes charge you €1 for some amount of time. So if you really do want to go on and check your email, you can do that. Or if you really want to check something on the web, it is available. During my first walk, that's that's what I did because I didn't have an iPhone with me. So this is an option. You don't want to take the technology with you, but you still want to have some access via the phone and via a computer. So that's what I call option one. Now, option two is you want to carry a basic phone, a flip phone for security. We'll get to the smartphones in a minute here, but flip phones are these older style phones that people still use, as a matter of fact. That's remarkable that people still use it. I still do use a flip phone, although I mainly use a smartphone. So you want to carry a basic phone with you. So here are three sub options. These become important for the other things we'll talk about. You can use a basic US cell phone with the European cellular network. You can use an unlocked basic US cell phone with a Spanish SIM for which you purchase prepaid minutes. I'll explain this in a minute here. Or you can actually buy a basic Spanish cell phone with prepaid minutes on it when you're in Spain, readily available. So I'm going to talk about each one of these sub options, A, B, C, here in a minute. But before that, let me say a few things about SIMs, a little note on SIMs, since they are rather relevant to the topic here. So SIM stands for Subscriber Information Module, and it's in your phone. It's a chip that goes in the phone, and it tells the phone what service you have and links to your phone number. So you can't do anything with your phone without having some sort of a SIM in it. When you buy your phone, it comes with a SIM in it, but you can change that. So you can replace your SIM, and in so doing, you can change your service, say from Verizon to AT&T or whatever it is, and effectively you can change your phone number by changing your SIM and contacting the service about that. So that really controls what you're doing with your device. Some phones have dual SIMs in them, where you can have both a SIM for AT&T and a SIM for Verizon in the same phone, or a SIM for the US and a SIM for Europe in the same phone. I don't have one of those. And there are different size SIMs. There's mini, micros, nanos, and eSIMs. So in the screen up here, you see this image of a SIM, and this is a mini and a micro. It doesn't show a nano in there. The micro is the one in the center. The larger one around the outside is the mini, if I remember correctly. And then there's eSIMs, which I'll point out in a minute. And these go physically into the phone. There's this. If you have an iPhone, there's a slot on the side that you open up, and you take the old SIM out, and you put the new SIM in there. Takes a little dexterity with your fingers, but it's not that difficult. Now, an eSIM stands for embedded SIM or electronic SIM. That's not which way you parse this particular phrase. It's not changeable. It's built into your phone, and it is programmed by the carrier. So with an eSIM in the phone, you don't replace the SIM in order to change your service or change your phone numbers. You contact the carrier, AT&T or whatever it is, and say, look, I've got an eSIM in my phone, change my service to AT&T or change my phone number to this, and so forth. It's only available in some phones. My older iPhone does not have an eSIM in it, but I think many of the newer iPhones do have an eSIM. So that allows you to avoid physically taking one of these very tiny little things and putting it in the phone. I think that's a nice option. So the SIM is very important, okay, because it really is what determines what you can do with your phone. So back to my options. For option 2, I had A, B, and C, if you recall. So option 2A was to use your basic cell phone in Europe. In this case, the phone must be what's called a tri-band or a quad-band phone. Most US basic phones are dual band phones, which means they use two frequencies. I'll use the word frequencies, not quite it, but it's the idea that are available in the US. But in Europe, there's a third and a fourth frequency, and you need to be able to access those to use a European phone, and that's a tri-band or a quad band. I actually found one of these at Target. They were selling a basic US phone that was, I don't know whether it was probably quad band, and I could have bought it for $69 and used it in Europe. In this case, your US phone number should work. People will be able to call you on it. Okay, but, and here's the big caveat on this, it can be very expensive to use, very, very expensive, because you will be charged for this by your phone service in the US, and they like to make a lot of money off of these. So you can do it, but be prepared. Don't complain to me if you get I've heard of people coming back with $1,000 bills on their phone services because they did this. So talk to your carrier first. Don't go off doing this without talking to your carrier. Option 2B is you get a Spanish SIM and you put it in your US phone. Now the phone has to be unlocked. If you buy a phone from AT&T and they give it to you for free, then it will be locked to AT&T's network, and you won't be able to change it to a different network until a couple of years have gone on. If you have a locked phone, you call up your provider and you say, "Will you please unlock my phone?" Which I've had to do in the past, and this will allow you to put in a European SIM. So then when you're over there, and the phone has to be a tri-band or quad band, you will get a Spanish phone number. Your US number will not work, okay? So examples of costs here, and this might be a little out of date, but it gives you an idea. Pay €5 for the SIM and €10 for prepaid minutes. Then calls are cheap for that matter. There's no charge for incoming calls, usually no charge for text and so forth. And you can add minutes all over the place with this type of a thing. So this is an option that you can use with your with an unlocked basic phone. And 2C is you can buy a phone over there. Not that expensive, to tell you the truth. Again, you'll have a Spanish phone number. Too fast there. 25 to 30 euros for a phone, plus another 10 euros of prepaid minutes. You pay the similar price for your minutes, okay? No charge for incoming calls, and you can add minutes at supermarkets and gas stations, other places. The flip phone that I have is actually a French flip phone from my many years of working in France. I bought it a number of years ago, and it's and I can add minutes to the service that I have in France online fairly easily. So this is perfectly reasonable option. Again, this is a basic phone. It's a flip phone. It's not a smartphone. So these are options that are available to you. And I actually use this 2C option for one of the phones that I take. Now, option 3 was you want to carry a smartphone, okay, which is the thing that we all love these days. And here you have some sub options for these. You can use your US smartphone with the European cellular network. You can use your US cell phone, but only with Wi-Fi, not with cellular. Or you can use your unlocked US smartphone with a Spanish SIM. These are all options that you have available if you want to use your smartphone. So let me go through A, B, and C again so you understand what's involved. So 3A is you use your US smartphone. Just take it over there. Your US phone number should work, okay? Voice and especially data charges can be very high. Here's where you can just get creamed with charges. Data is really expensive. I don't know how much they're charging for this, but it can be quite substantial. So talk to your carrier first, okay? Don't go hopping on the plane and plan to use your US phone over there without discussing with your carrier. Now, some carriers offer special international plans, AT&T, for example, offers I can't remember what they call the plan, but basically it's $10 a day for each day that you use your phone. If you don't use your phone for international connections, you don't get charged for that day. But if you use it, whether you use it for a second or an hour, it's going to be $10 for that day. I actually have this on my phone for emergency purposes. So if I really, really had to use a phone over there, I've got this as a backup. It's available to me. And I might come back with $20 or $30 that I have to pay AT&T for the use of this. It depends upon how careful you are in using your phone. Now, option 3B is you use your smartphone, but only for Wi-Fi and not for cellular. Well, here you won't get any US charges. So you have to set the phone to airplane mode. This is something I do as soon as I get on the plane. It's in airplane mode. And that means I will not use cellular. And I make sure I don't accidentally turn it off airplane mode. And if it's on airplane mode, you aren't going to get charged any of the US or cellular charges. And Wi-Fi is everywhere and free, okay? All of the albergues have free Wi-Fi. Every bar you go into has free Wi-Fi. You go into the bar and you turn on your phone and it finds a network, and you need to know what the password is. Sometimes the password is posted on the wall. Sometimes it's on your receipt. Sometimes you go up to the person there and you hold up your phone where it's asking for password, and that person will type it in for you. It's ubiquitous. Shoot, excuse me. So don't worry about that. Wi-Fi is readily available. Now, for voice with this, you can use some other service. So Skype, FaceTime, WhatsApp, and so forth. As long as you're in Wi-Fi mode, you're fine. So WhatsApp, which is a very common text communication application in Europe, has voice connections with it. And you can use WhatsApp, but you can use one of these other things. A lot of people use FaceTime to connect with their family back in the States or wherever they're from. As long as they're on Wi-Fi, doesn't cost you anything. So that's an option that's available to you there. But again, you're only using this with Wi-Fi. You can't be out in the middle of the trail someplace and make a phone call. I use Skype Minutes a lot when I make long distance calls. Skype Minutes is a wonderful tool. Charges you about 2 cents a minute for long distance calls any place in the world. And so it's a very handy. You have to sign up for Skype Minutes in advance and give them your credit card, but it's really, really inexpensive. You can't accept incoming calls except through one of these other apps that you have here. So this is an option that's available to you. And then the final option for 3 is you have an unlocked US smartphone with a Spanish SIM in it. And then this gives you gives you most options. Now, it has to be what's called a GSM phone, which virtually all phones are today, but I got caught on this one time. I was over there and I had an older Verizon phone, and it wasn't GSM, it used something called CDMA. So I went into a Spanish phone store and said, here, I want to get a Spanish SIM for this phone. And he put one in and it didn't work. And we played with that for half an hour, could not get it to work. And I didn't realize that an older phone like this, won't work because it uses a different technology. So it was an older phone I had. I said, well, this would be rather cool if I could turn it into a European phone, and it didn't work. So don't think that phone that you have stuck in your drawer will necessarily work. It might or might not work for this. It has to be unlocked, and you can get your phone unlocked fairly easily. You just have to call your carrier. and they'll give you some codes to type in to unlock your phone. And if you do this, you'll get a Spanish mobile phone number, which your contacts any place can phone, for that matter. Examples of the costs, I've seen this, maybe 10 euros for the SIM, and so you get so much data with that, you get so much voice with that. There's no charge for incoming calls, and you can add minutes all over the place. So it's a fairly common thing to do this. So you just you get a Spanish SIM. If it's an eSIM, that'll be easier as opposed to a physical SIM. I've never used an eSIM, so I'm not quite sure about the procedure for it, but it's something that you can do. Okay, option 4. You want to be able to read books electronically. So that's the voice option that I've been describing here. You want to be able to read books electronically. What do you do if you want to be able to do that? Well, you can use your smartphone. Text is small. That's true. You can get an e-reader, a Kindle or a Nook or one of those types of things. You can take a tablet, a mini tablet. The biggest thing to be aware of if you start looking at these other technologies here is the weight, okay? And don't forget the weight includes not only the device, but also the charger that goes with it. And that adds to your weight. So just be observant of the weight. Option 5, you don't want to get lost. Oh, that sounds like a pretty important thing. Okay. So you can use a GPS navigator. You can take a Garmin or a TomTom or one of those types of devices with you if you want. You need to load European maps in it before you leave. I've never done this, but as I understand it, the maps can be costly, $100 or so for the European maps. And so this is something that you have to factor into your budget. You can use your smartphone with Google Maps or some other mapping type of system. But with Google Maps, you have to be online regularly because Google Maps is basically an online service, but you are able to download the local maps. But then when you get out of that locality, you'll have to do it again. If you don't have Wi-Fi, then you must use cellular, okay? And then data charges will apply unless you have a Spanish SIM. And this can be very expensive. I want to emphasize, anytime you get data, if you don't have a Spanish SIM, it can get very, very pricey. And I don't want you coming back from the end of this trip and showing me your AT&T bill and it says $2,000 on it. I'm not going to be responsible for your bills. Anyway, so just be aware of that fact, okay? But this is a possibility, but there's a better option than any of this. Follow the yellow arrows. You don't really need, I don't think you need a GPS navigator in Europe. The arrows are ubiquitous. If you follow the arrows, that's fine. You'll get there. You might get lost a little bit, but that doesn't really make any difference. You'll eventually get there. So look for those yellow arrows and follow those. Option 6, you want to take photos. So this is something I didn't put at the beginning there, but everybody says, well, what about my photos? I want to take pictures. Everybody wants to take pictures, okay, when they're on the Camino. Well, first, a quiz, okay? Can you explain the impact of each of the following on a photograph? Focal length, f-stop, aperture, shutter speed, ISO, depth of field, optical versus digital zoom, megapixels, sensor size, JPEG and RAW. Can you explain the impact of each of these on the photo? Okay, and that's the quiz. Now, here we go. So how did you do on that quiz? Okay, you failed. Okay, that's okay. Most people will fail that quiz. Okay, in that case, take pictures with your smartphone. You'll be happy. They'll be fine. Or if you really want something different than that, get a good quality basic point and shoot camera. You know, there's fewer and fewer of those out there because more and more people are using their smartphones for taking these pictures, and they're getting pretty good. They aren't as good as a basic point and shoot camera, but they're pretty darn good. If you do that, you turn off digital zoom. Digital zoom is the pictures degrade in digital zoom, okay? So, but this is an option, perfectly acceptable option. I'd say probably most people do this sort of stuff. Now, if you passed, again, you can take pictures with your smartphone. Nothing says you can't do that. Or you take a good quality advanced point and shoot camera, compact camera with adjustable settings in it, and where you can adjust the f-stop, the shutter speed, the ISO, and all of those types of things on the camera. And you turn off digital zoom. Or you can take a digital SLR camera or what's called a mirrorless camera. The disadvantage of this last bullet down here is that it's heavy. A DSLR is a heavy camera, you know, with all the stuff that goes with it. The mirrorless cameras are a little bit less heavy, but they're still pretty heavy. I'm an old film photographer. I like taking pictures and don't do film anymore, although I've got a bunch of film cameras around my house here. And so I actually do the second bullet down here. I have a good quality advanced point and shoot camera, a Canon that allows me to make all of these adjustments. And so what that means is I can go into a darkened cathedral and make adjustments to the camera and get a pretty good image by adjusting the f-stop or one of these other adjustments on the camera and get a pretty good image with that. But you know, a lot of people are, you know, hardcore photographers, and they're going to take their SLR with them. That's fine. You know, you just realize it's going to add a little weight to your backpack. There's nothing wrong with that, doing that. So your photography choices are a number. I would say that probably the vast majority of people just use their smartphone for pictures these days. The image will be good, but it won't be as good as you would get from a good camera. Where you would see that difference, by the way, is when you blow up the image or you use one of these camera tools like Photoshop or whatever. Then you'll notice the difference. In most snapshots, you probably won't notice any of the difference with that. So these are the options for taking pictures. Now, what do my wife and me do? So originally we wanted voice for both of us, or we want voice for both of us. Security, data for me. I'm the technical guy. My wife doesn't care about searching the web. But for security, I'd like her to have a phone. Well, we don't read electronically. I'm not. Whatever I read on the Camino, some brochure that I pick up. I don't need to sit there and read a book on the Camino. In fact, I found that I don't have time to read on the Camino. There's so much else that's going on. Now, with a locked smartphone, and this is what happened the first few times that I tried this, I took 2 identical prepaid minutes European basic cell phones. I had 2 of these phones from France that I carried with me, flip phones, which I still have, as a matter of fact. I go online and added minutes to each one of them, one for my wife and one for me. These were the phones that we carried. I couldn't do the internet, but that didn't bother me. I could always use the internet at an albergue someplace. And you take 1 charger then, because you don't want the extra weight of a second charger on it. My wife would carry one in her backpack, and I carry one in my backpack. Okay. If I took a smartphone, I'd leave it in airplane mode and only use it for Wi-Fi because I didn't want to pay for those charges when I got home. Now, recently we had an unlocked smartphone, so that changed things with the whole thing. I have 1 prepaid minute European basic cell phone with voice for my wife. She doesn't need a smartphone. She doesn't care about that. And I have a smartphone with a European SIM in it for voice and data for me. Okay, and this is what we carry. It does require two chargers, one for the smartphone and one for the basic phone, and so we have to pay that penalty. But nevertheless, it's what we do here. And your situation may be entirely different. I'm not going to tell you you do what I do. You analyze your own situation. You know, if you got a father and mother and a bunch of kids, you're going to want to figure out how you're going to deal with the kids. They're probably going to want to have smartphones because they want to do all of that type of stuff when they're on the Camino. Well, be prepared to pay a little bit extra for that. But that's entirely up to you with what you want to do, not me. But there's a number of problems that you have as you go on this. And the first, I call it big problem number one, okay? And that is charging. These things run out of power. So you've got to charge the phone, okay? And you have to take the charger with you, of course, and it adds to the weight in your backpack. You need a European plug adapter, which is a very simple little device. They cost less than $5. You need a Type E plug adapter. There's different plug adapters for different countries. And the type that you need for Spain is called a Type E. It'll say on the plug adapter what countries it's good for. Be aware of the fact that the plug adapter for Britain is different than the plug adapter for the continent. So if you're going to go to the British Isles afterwards, you'll also have to take along a British plug adapter. I can't remember what the letter is that identifies the British plug adapter, but you'll definitely need the Type E. And you might consider taking two of them with you. They're quite small, lightweight, but invariably these things get left behind. Or you just go to the desk at the albergue or the hotel and ask to look in their box full of electronics, and there'll be all of that stuff there, cables and chargers and those types of things. So be prepared, maybe by taking a second plug adapter with you. You do not need well, I'll get to this in a minute here. You do not need a voltage converter. Go back here a little bit here. I've been going to Europe since I was in my teens, and I have never taken a voltage converter with me. All of these devices work on dual voltage. We're 110 in the US, they're 240 over there. All of these devices work just fine. They're all designed to work on dual voltage, including the computer, which I've taken many times to Europe, not on the Camino, but at other times. And I've never blown anything up. So don't worry about it. And of course, if you have multiple devices, probably just have one charger. The reason for that's big problem number two. So big problem number two is weight, okay? And as you know, your backpack is heavy, okay? And so you want to minimize weight. So I took a bunch of devices down to the post office and put them on the post office scale. My basic US cell phone with a charger and an adapter, gotta count that stuff in, weighed 5.6 ounces. My US cell phone, just my European cell phone, my French cell phone with the charger weighed 4.8 ounces. At the time that I did this, I had an iPhone 5. I have a 7 now, but I had a 5, and it's in a case. It's in a protective case, and it has a charger and an adapter. And I weighed all of that stuff. That was 7.2 ounces. I also have an iPad Mini. I don't take it to Europe, but I wanted to see how much it weighed. And it has a case and a charger and an adapter. This was I can't remember which model it was, and that was weighing 19 ounces. I didn't weigh my laptop, but it was probably weighs about 3 pounds, and the charger on it is heavy. That's a half a pound in itself, and so it would have added maybe somewhere between 3 and 4 pounds, even if you get the lightest weight one that's available out there. I'm not going to lug that around with me on the Camino. So this gives you an idea of the weight that you're dealing with. And if you've never walked the Camino before, um, um, be aware of every ounce that you put into your backpack. At the end of multiple days of walking, those ounces, you'll really feel those ounces. So keep them low. So that's big problem number 2, which is the weight. So now what about apps? Okay, along the way, I said that in this presentation, I'm going to talk about apps a bit, and you've decided to take a smartphone, probably the most common situation. And if you were listening to what I had to say you've unlocked it, you've got a Spanish SIM in it, so you're gonna pay for minutes on the SIM, but it's going to be much less than if you pay for those minutes when you get back to the States. What apps do you use? Okay, if you're going to take the phone, you might as well have some apps on them like this. Well, there's 2 general types of apps. Okay, the first are non-Camino specific apps. These are apps that you use for other purposes that we have on our phones that we use back here in the States for whatever purpose it is. And then there's Camino specific apps, which are designed specifically for the Camino de Santiago, okay? That you don't use in the States. So let's talk about each one of those. We did a survey to find out what other people used, over 400 respondents to the survey. And so I'm going to show you the results of that survey here so you can see what people used. So first, non-Camino specific apps. These are the ones that you use at home, whether you are going on the Camino or not, okay? And so here's the results of the survey that we got back, which the percentage of people who carried a smartphone used on the Camino. And I've got these broken down into different categories here. Email and texting, SMS, those are right up at the top of what people use their phones for. Facebook, WhatsApp, and non-Camino specific apps, those are common, but not as common as the first category. Then there's a whole bunch in the middle here that fall into this in the center section here. You can look down there and see what what your favorite app falls into. Some people take a blog app because they like to blog. Or then down at the bottom, you have YouTube and Twitter and Pinterest, which is not used that much on the Camino, okay? Some people do post their stuff to YouTube while they're walking, but it's just not that common. People generally post when they get back on it. So you can see what people, what people use according to the survey that I did here. The most common thing was communication. People, when we first did our surveys, we had the hypothesis that people were using their smartphones to find their way by following a route and so forth. That turned out not to be the case. People were using their smartphones to communicate with other people, and they use the yellow arrows to find their routes. So the pathfinding use of the apps was just not that common. So these are non-Camino specific apps. Now, what about Camino specific apps that are out there? Okay, as I told you previously, we found 72 of these apps, some for the iPhone, some for Android, some for the Windows Phone system, which we don't find in this country, but you find it overseas in some locations. Hungary, for example, is 90% Windows Phone and not iPhone or Android. So you do have those types of apps that are specific for that configuration. So we took a look at these, and as I said, we had a massive spreadsheet where we had characteristics like costs, languages, routes, etc., and features like what did they show in the app, the accommodations, the restaurants, points of interest, and so forth. We gathered all this information. Unfortunately, now it's probably a little out of date. I'd love to go back through and and update all of that information, but I personally don't have time to do that. And we looked at all of this type of data there, and we put some thought into it. So here's a table that you'll see here of what apps pilgrims use. I'm not going to show you this whole massive spreadsheet, obviously. You won't be able to notice it now. 52% of those who carry smartphones, according to this survey we did a few years ago, carried Camino-specific apps, had Camino-specific apps on their smartphone. And what did they take? Well, here's the ones that they used. 64% used a Wise Pilgrim app. They have different apps for different routes. Aroski, which is actually, I'll say more about it in a few minutes here. It's a European system. There's Buen Camino, some other ones down in here. There's eCamino, which I liked very much, but it's been discontinued. It actually was based upon Brierley. And unfortunately, they couldn't make a living off of it, so they've canceled that. And there's a few others down here that you can see. So these were the apps that people actually used and actually either purchased or downloaded for their smartphones. And you can decide whether you want to use these or some other app. But one of the big problems, we get now to big problem number 3. I've already done 1 and 2, and that is that you may need to be online to use an app. Okay, that's an issue. So some apps only work if they're online. Okay, if you're out in the middle of the Camino, you don't have either a cellular or a Wi-Fi connection, it's not going to work. Okay, and so you need to be aware of this, that you have to be online somehow. And if your smartphone is in airplane mode, then you can't use the app while walking. Only when you're connected with Wi-Fi. And if it's not in airplane mode and it's in cellular mode, then you're probably going to have to pay for it. Okay, so you can use these apps while walking, but apps are data intensive, and data really eats up the technology, and you got to pay for it. So just be aware of the fact that if you're going to use one of these apps, okay, that it can be data intensive and the costs can be very high. All right, so that showed up over there. Oh, excuse me. Anyway, but let's talk about some apps to consider, okay, that you might want to look at. Somehow that got over there. I don't know how it did that. I'm going to check my pointer options here and see if I can get rid of that. I don't know why it's there. Anyway, so one thing is the Camino de Santiago by CNIG. CNIG, I believe, is the Spanish agency, mapping agency. I don't know what you would call that in the United States. And they have excellent maps, really good ones for the iPhone and Android and so forth. It's last time I looked, it was Camino Francés only, very high quality route maps, but you have to be online to use them. So that's an option if you really want a detailed map. Aroski is a chain of grocery stores in Spain, and you probably end up in Aroski sometime to get your food. And they have an excellent guide by a company called Bico, and it's iPhone only. The last time I checked, and it's Spanish only. So if you don't speak Spanish, you might be a little lost. It has a number of different routes okay? And it can be used offline for most functions, but online for the maps. You have to be online for the maps. So that's something you might want to look at. The Wise Pilgrim guides, I think, are good. And there's different versions for different routes. And you can download those and pay what you think is appropriate, if there's a charge for it. They can be used offline for most functions, but for their mapping function, their major mapping function, I believe you have to be online with those. So that's a possibility. Buen Camino, a lot of people like Buen Camino in my recent informal survey that I did. And with Buen Camino, you can download the data for different routes to your phone, and then you can use it out offline with the downloaded data for that particular route. You download the data for different routes, so that's another app that that a lot of people seem to like. Okay, there's the Gut guides. I fell in love with these the last time that I hiked, and the Gut guides are. Last time I checked was just Camino Frances and Camino del Norte, and you can use them offline for all functions. One of the things that I found really nice about these is I could, it was GPS based, it would pinpoint where I was, and I could ask the guide, how far is it to this next waypoint or this next town or whatever it was? And it'd say, oh, that's 6.2 kilometers. That was really nice. I like that feature. So the Gut guides are nice. And those are guides for trails around the world, not just the Camino de Santiago, but I personally like them quite a bit. So those are some apps that you might consider, but there may be other apps out there. And when we get to Q&A, I'm going to ask you, what apps do you like that you found that you like? So, consider these and maybe some other ones. And you can always search it. You can always say Camino de Santiago apps. Now, but do you need a Camino-specific smartphone app? Do you really need it? Interesting question. Okay. So we asked the question in one of my surveys. How much do you agree with this statement? Smartphone apps are better than paper-based guides, such as Brierley, for use while walking the Camino. So we asked people to evaluate that question in the surveys that I did. Interesting bit. Okay. And here's the results that we got. 4% strongly agreed with this. 18% agreed. 40% didn't care. 31% disagreed, and 8% disagreed. The majority of people either disagreed or strongly disagreed with this. They didn't feel it was essential that you had an app on your phone. I know they're cool. Everybody wants to do that, but they aren't essential. You can follow the yellow arrows and get along just fine, or carry a paper guide with you, or whatever, or like some people do, they take their paper guide on their smartphone. They download it to their smartphone or whatever. But the majority of people don't think it's that important to have an app on their phone. So don't feel that you got to go out and get a whole bunch of apps before you go on the Camino. So to conclude, what mobile technology to take and what to leave at home? This was the opening question of this presentation here. The answer is there's no single answer. And I hope that's a theme that you caught from this presentation. It depends on you, not me, not anybody else, okay? It's your decision, not mine, not somebody else's. As we say, it's your Camino. And if you decide to carry mobile devices, there are many options, okay? And which option is best for you depends upon your needs, not my needs, not somebody else's. I can't emphasize that enough. And investigate smartphone apps carefully. They can be data intensive, so you got to be a little careful. I carry them. I have them on my phone, but whether I need them or not is another story like that. And the final point here. Okay, the final caveat is it doesn't work until it works. What this means is, this is something we say in IT all the time. You know, we build a new system or a new app or whatever it is, doesn't work until it actually is out there in the field and is working. And that's true of these. So you may download a bunch of technology to your phone. It may work just great here in the States, at your home or your office, whatever, and you get to Spain and it doesn't work at all. That's not uncommon. So it doesn't work until you're out there actually using it, that it'll work. So be prepared for that. So with that, that concludes my presentation. And so let's see what questions there are. So Lori, why don't you disconnect me and open the, well, let's see, I can go to the chat over here and do that. We'll go down through the chat, okay? Let me go through the chat and see what people have to say here, and we'll do that, okay? Go back to the beginning here, and then we'll open it up to chat in general like that. Yeah, Lori.
Rob, can you please stop sharing your screen so we can see everybody?
Sure.
Thanks.
There we go.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right.
Can I get to the chat? Yeah, I can get to the chat with this, can't I? Okay. Great to see all you folks in there. I'm glad that you decided to join us. So back up to the beginning of the chat up here, and then we'll open it up for chat from the audience here. Here's a bunch of people telling us where you're from. It's great to see you. Welcome, everybody.
Pilgrims, if you have questions that you want to ask live on camera, just raise your hand.
Yeah. So I'm going to go down through these introductions here at the beginning. Martin Pena, everybody down here. Take advantage of the dual SIMs in my phones. How to do this and any experience with this? Well, if you have a phone that will take dual SIMs, then you have 2 slots in it, one for each SIM. And I don't have one of those, but you'll just have to read the manual for your phone to how to put those in there. And there's some sort of a software toggle to go from one SIM to the other. And since I don't have one, I don't know what your phone is like, I don't know how to do it. When was the most recent survey? That was about 2 years ago, if I remember correctly. And that was the international survey that I did that. And I should update these surveys. It takes a lot of work to do a survey like that. That's not a trivial thing. Here's someone's recommends maps.me and mappy.cz, which you can download to your maps. You know, I've never heard of these. Your phone for free, and then use the map, even if you don't have cell phone. Okay, there's some good advice from Andy. Thank you, Andy. Take the plug adapter to your charger, and then you won't leave it behind in the outlet. I still think they're going to be left behind. Or get a plug adapter with 2 inputs. You know, you find these plug adapters all over the place, so being left behind. So Susan Austin, each ounce counts. That is correct. I had each gram. I was giving my packing presentation, and this one woman raised her hands and said, well, I'm going to take my tablet with me because I like to read, and it only weighs a pound. And there was a collective groan from the audience. You know, a pound in your backpack is a lot of weight, you know, so you don't take something because it only weighs a certain amount. Each ounce, each gram counts. I agree with that. Oh yeah, there's Lori has that picture, sharing and so forth. As I understand it, the albergues have many more plugs in the walls than they used to have. But formerly, you'd end up with all sorts of sharing of the plugs. And you probably should be a little cautious about this. There might be somebody wanting to steal your device. So although pilgrims are honest in general, sometimes that happens. Let's see now. What do you recommend when you're in touch with others on the Camino? Yeah, that communicating with others on the Camino, probably WhatsApp is the best for that. If you can get their phone number and put it in WhatsApp, you're going to find that to be the best. So one of the things that I recommend you do is either before you go or when you get to Europe, download WhatsApp and set yourself up in WhatsApp. You use that not only with other pilgrims, but with places to stay, accommodations, or whatever. It's become the universal text communication tool in Europe. World stores. This has a charger that has 2 USB outlets, so I can charge another phone. It came in handy for a few times when fellow programmers. So sometimes the charger, the little brick that comes with your iPhone or whatever it is, sometimes you can buy versions of those that have 2 USB connections. Take that instead of one. Now battery backups. This is something that that I've had people recommend it before, because you can be out on the Camino someplace and all of a sudden your battery dies. So one of these battery backups, they're a bit heavy, but it's not a bad idea. I carry a small one with me, but they do get to be heavy. Okay. Facebook Messenger, I don't know anything about it, but I've heard about it. With the Spanish system, there's a universal number to secret system in the middle of nowhere. That's 112 is the universal emergency number in Europe. That's the equivalent of our 911. So if you're out there and you have a serious emergency, you dial 112 any place in Europe. WhatsApp's very useful. Okay. Yeah, well, here's 112, nationwide free emergency number in Spain. Another person liked WhatsApp. Yes, Wi-Fi speed may vary and will affect your download time. There's no question about that. I didn't know this. This is new. Guthook guides have been renamed the Far Out guides. Okay, let me write that down there and I'll check that out. I never could understand why they were called Guthooks, but that's what they were called. I will check that. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. So I have to update my slides here. I'm finding this whole thing hilarious. I walked in 99 to that and carried a Walkman and some tapes. I really like being able to listen to the radio, but I do speak Spanish. So there's that. But honestly, for those who haven't walked the Camino, it didn't even bother with a guidebook or maps. My second and third time, like the guy says, follow the arrows. I think that's fine. I think that's great, and I see no reason why you can't do that. Throw the stuff out, follow the arrows, or follow the pilgrim in front of you. You'll get there. It's not rocket science finding your way around the Camino. Unlock smartphone with Spanish SIM. Well, geez, I'm not sure about that, to be honest with you. Still work in airplane mode. GPS is a separate system from the cellular system, so I think it should, but I could be wrong about that. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Following the arrows is easy, not so easy on lesser trodden routes. That's true. So you can download these apps. That's correct. But I always found that if I couldn't find the arrow, I could stand there in the middle of the plaza of the town and look stupid, and some Spaniard will come up to me and point me in the right direction. The Spanish are very helpful. Or you just go up to somebody and say, Camino, and he says, oh, it's over there. So eventually you'll get there. Let's see. Someone told me to get a Google phone for use in Europe. Does anyone know any? Well, I don't. Okay. And does WhatsApp also work with communicating with people back home? Yes. Okay. Okay, WhatsApp questions here. I have a Google phone. It's just an Android phone. Yes, right. Right. Yeah, it's free on WhatsApp is free. That is correct. But Wi-Fi connections are important.
Yeah, Rob,
Okay,
WhatsApp is free, but you do need data to be able to use it, or Wi-Fi, and so your data will be charged when you're using it.
Who's talking? Is that Andy?
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's Andy. Yeah.
Well, you know, Andy, I'll be. I understand what you're saying, and that's what I thought, but I've been told differently. And I've done my Googling on it and researched it, so it's not clear to me. You're probably right, Andy. Don't get me wrong, but
we just need some kind of You need some kind of connection to connect.
That's right.
Yeah,
you need to have some type of a connection.
It's either via Wi-Fi, when of course it's free because it's Wi-Fi, right. Or if you have data either by a SIM card or an American connection through Wi-Fi,
right.
Then the WhatsApp's going to go through the data network. So it's free, but you need something to send those messages out to the blue.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you about that. I've been a bit discouraged in finding out how I get charged for using WhatsApp. And
it is confusing for sure.
You see, for example, you have to give your phone number to WhatsApp, but it does not have to be your actual phone number. It could be a number you make up. It's a number by which WhatsApp identifies you. So you don't have to give your phone number, but there does have to be some way to connect.
Right.
And I think you're right, Andy, about that.
Yeah.
So, okay.
We learned the hard way when Kate, my wife, used WhatsApp when she just had her American, like a Verizon connection, and then Verizon charged her through the nose because she didn't have any special European plan. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right, Andy. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Now here, I just got one more, the last one. WhatsApp has recently changed and doesn't always need your phone number. Okay, well, I've got to do a little investigation into that. Yeah, but my understanding is WhatsApp doesn't need your actual phone number. It needs a number to identify you. So it doesn't need your actual US or European phone number. Okay. Lori, somebody mentioned that they use Booking. Yeah, Booking has become the most commonly used booking application over there. There's no question about that. I've used Booking many times, and it seems to work pretty well. Although, let me just warn you one thing about Booking. You can often get, not often, but sometimes get a lower rate if you phone the place rather than going through Booking, because Booking has its rates, but if you give the hotel a phone call and say, do you have a room, and how much is going to be? Often it will be less of that, and there may be additional rooms available that are not on Booking's website. That's something else I found. You call, you go on Booking and they say there's no rooms, then you call them up and it says, oh yeah, we've got 3 rooms left. You can have one of those. So don't be too discouraged if Booking says there are no rooms available there. Okay, let's open it up to general Q&A. And so anybody who wants to ask a question, raise your hand or shout out or whatever here, and let's hear what you have to say. Anybody or have questions you have or anything? Any apps that you found that I didn't mention that you really like, for those who have walked the Camino with an app or without an app? Also notice that Booking Holdings also owns Priceline, Booking, Agoda, Kayak, Open Table, and rental cars. I didn't know that. Wow. How come we weren't smart enough to start an app like that? Okay. Anybody else have a comment or a question, or anybody else who's going to the Camino soon? Any of you guys? Oh, good. Jim, Andy. I will. Kobe. That's great. I'm leaving June 3rd or 4th, something like that. I'll be over there for most of the month of June, and I encourage you to contact me. I'm going to be in Santiago a lot, and on June 22nd is our wedding anniversary, and I invite any of you who are in Santiago at that time to come to dinner with my wife and me, and help celebrate our wedding in Santiago. So please get in touch with me if you're going to be there, and I'll let you know where we're going to be and include you in the reservation. Be glad to see you in Santiago. We did that last year. Last time I was there is September, and I saw Dinah and forgot the woman from Seattle that was also on that at that dinner that we had in Santiago. So I look forward to seeing you. Kobe, right? Oh, I see you, Kobe. Yeah, what's up, Kobe?
Hey, Rob, just a quick question. I was picking up off of what Jim said, and I had a problem when I was in Spain the last time where my card got hacked. So I was just wondering what other people are doing about safeguarding their ATM cards and things like that when they were traveling.
Well, that's an interesting. Your ATM card got hacked.
It was
Wow.
very awful.
Oh, I bet it was. Wow. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any experience or suggestions with that? Anything? I don't see anything coming. Andy looks like he's raised his hand.
Well, just have multiple. Yeah, I mean, it happens. Doo-doo happens, right? Just have multiple cards. That's about the only answer.
Yeah, I did learn that the hard way. I had only brought the one card, and that was harsh.
Well, also, whenever you enter your PIN, cover your hand.
Yeah.
Don't if you watch Europeans, they will cover their hand when they enter their PIN.
Yeah.
When you enter your PIN, you don't want somebody looking over your shoulder and seeing what your PIN is.
Yeah.
I've never been hacked, and I've, I actually have a different situation because I have a European bank account, which is full of euros, and so I use a European ATM card. I don't use my U.S. one, and use money out of it, rather than using money out of my US bank account and converting. So, but I can do that because I work in Europe and I get paid in euros. And so it's a convenient thing for me to do, but not everybody can do that type of thing. Anything else? All right. Well, I want to give a pitch for my presentation that I gave last September for the Camino walk that I did with my wife. And as some of you may know, my wife has Alzheimer's, is in a wheelchair, and she and I did some of the Finisterre loop in her wheelchair. And Lori, if you get a chance, can you post the link to that video up on the website here? And
Sure.
there's a video that we've posted to YouTube about that trip. And if you're interested, I encourage you to take a look at it. We are currently planning to do the same thing this June, but we're going to do the Portuguese, the coastal Portuguese with the spiritual variant. and about 9 days on it is what I estimate. So that's what our plan is. And I'd love to see any of you that are out there doing that. You know, we've done the Francis, we've done the Portuguese, the Central Portuguese, and we've done the Inglés. And I'm just looking for other adventures and other places. Take my wife, she loves the Camino, and so I take my wife on these things, and we will probably do a video about it when we get back. So I see that Lori has posted the link to the YouTube video here, and feel free to take a look at that and send me an email if you have any comments or questions about that. Anything else from any of you pilgrims out there? We really appreciate you joining us for this presentation. So if there aren't any other questions, then I'm going to say buen camino, and wish you all a great time in Spain, and a great rest of your great weekend coming up here, and hope to see you either someplace here in the Bay Area or someplace else, or see you in Spain. So
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob, so much. Great
Thank you,
job.
take
Rob.
care now.
Thank you,
Take care
Rob.
now. Take care
Thanks,
to all
Rob.
of you.
Buen camino, everyone.
Buen camino.
And the next Camino 101 packing presentation will be on April 22nd. And so far we have confirmed on the packing panel, Scott Williams and Susan Alcorn and myself. So it'll be the 4 of us on Friday, the 22nd of April,
What time, Lori?
4 o'clock.
Thank you.
Yeah.
4 o'clock California.
California time. Yep.
Right.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend.
Thanks.